How can it be that the second coming is described as the days of Noe, with people marrying and giving in marriage during the Great Tribulation? I'm going to say that again. How can it be that the second coming is described as the days of Noe, with people marrying and giving in marriage during the Great Tribulation? So here's what I think the person is asking. How can the second coming be described like the flood, with people marrying and giving in marriage, when what they're going through is they're going through the Great Tribulation? So why would marrying and giving in marriage happen at that time? Look with me at Luke 17 and verse 26. And as it was in the days of Noe, so shall it be also in the days of the Son of Man. Well, that's pretty clear. As far as Scripture is concerned, the days of Noah are a perfect metaphor, a perfect picture of what the days are like before the second coming. Verse 27, they did eat, they drank, they married wives, they were given in marriage until the day that Noah entered into the ark, and the flood came and destroyed them all. So just think what's happening in the days of Noah. So the flood is coming, and what does the vast majority of mankind do? They just carry on with business as usual. And by the way, that is frankly how most of life works. You know what happens, and I'm sorry this is the case, but you know what happens with people that die in traffic accidents? 10 minutes before that, they were going through their normal life and had no belief that their life was about to end. You know what happens to people that have heart attacks often is 10 minutes before it happened, they had no reason to suspect that their life was going to end, right? And that's just, that's how life is. Death doesn't give you a countdown clock. Now, our video staff is very helpful to you, right? They tell you the show's going to start in so many minutes, and you can plan your life around that, and you can time it and be prepared. Death doesn't do that, does it? A lot of times it just shows up, and people had no idea that was their day, but it is their day. Look with me at Matthew 24, and let's look at verse 36, Matthew 24:36. But of that day and hour knoweth no man, no, not the angels of heaven, but my Father only. But as the days of Noe were, so shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. For as in the days that were before the flood, they were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage, until the day that Noe entered into the ark. And they knew not until the flood came and took them all away, so shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. So you can see that it's a clear scriptural pattern that the days before the second coming are likened to the days before the flood. So to understand this better, get Genesis 6. Let's understand some things about the days before the flood. Now, while you're turning to Genesis 6, let me ask you this. Should the flood have snuck up on anyone? Should it have come as a surprise, a shock? Genesis 6, verse 3, and the Lord said, My spirit shall not always strive with man, for that he also is flesh, yet his days shall be 120 years. What God does is he gives 120 years of advance warning. He says, he didn't say, I'm going to flood the earth tomorrow. He waits 120 years. Get with me, 2 Peter chapter 2. 2 Peter chapter 2. Now here's a fascinating thing. If you want to study the first book of the Bible, Genesis, you sometimes have to turn to the end of the Bible to find the cross references. So 2 Peter has some interesting information about Noah. 2 Peter chapter 2, verse 5. 2 Peter 2:5. And spared not the old world, but saved Noah, the eighth person, a preacher of righteousness, bringing in the flood upon the world of the ungodly. Now, if you take those two verses together, Genesis 6:3, 2 Peter 2:5, here's what I think they mean. God tells Noah, I'm going to flood the earth. It's going to be 120 years. That's what's going to happen. Should it have snuck up on anyone? Absolutely not. They had plenty of advance warning. 2 Peter 2:5 it tells you what Noah was. What was he? He was a preacher of righteousness. What 2 Peter 2 tells you is this: what Noah does after God tells him 120 years and I'm going to flood the earth, Noah is a preacher of righteousness. He declares that to mankind, is what he does. He doesn't let them sit there ignorant. He tells them the flood's coming. Now, if you think your ministry is frustrating, do you have people you witness to and they don't listen? Do you teach things and people, do they vilify you? Do they reproach you? Do they speak ill of you? Do all those things go on? I mean, those things happen in life, right? Imagine Noah's ministry. He's told the flood is coming. It's happening in 120 years. He's a preacher of righteousness. He preaches that for 120 years. And the only people he can persuade are his wife and his 3 sons. Isn't that incredible? That had to have been a frustrating ministry, because what's happening is you can see the freight train coming down the track. God told us he's flooding the earth in 120 years. I tell these people again and again and again, and they're just like, And in fact, you know what they do? They carry on with life as normal. They're eating, they're drinking, they're marrying, they're giving in marriage. They're just acting like there's never going to be a day of reckoning, that the prophecies aren't going to come true. You know what's going to happen before the second coming? People are going to be that exact same way. Man's heart is often to scoff at God. What happens is the judgment hasn't happened yet, so it'll never happen. And they do what's called whistling past the graveyard. In other words, it'll never happen, and they try to reassure themselves that everything's okay. There won't be any judgment. Well, God is a very gracious God. He is a long-suffering God. But make no mistake, there is an end to God's patience. The dispensation of grace will end. There will be a second coming, and God will pour out on his wrath on his adversaries. So the flood is, in fact, a perfect picture of what it is like before the second coming.